Price, Romero, Runner, Semidian, Steinberg, Strickland, Walters, Wiggins, Wolk, Wright, Wyland, Yee. Mr. President, a quorum is present.
Members, a quorum is present. Will all senators please report to the floor? A quorum is present. Would the members and guests beyond the rail in the gallery please rise? We'll be led in prayer this morning by our guest chaplain, Dr. David Thompson, after which please remain standing. We'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance today by Senator Romero.
Let us all pray. Loving God of us all, we come into your presence with hope and anticipation that we'll see the best in each other today. Help us never to say no to an opportunity, even if it is something that does not seem at first to be what we wanted to do. May we work as hard as we can. May we never give up on being kind. May we care about something greater than ourselves. May we learn to share with the other people around us. And may we be resolute and cordial. Solomon, who knew the art of good governance, once said, "Hold to sound judgment and to prudence. Do not let them out of your sight. They will prove the life of your soul, an ornament around your neck. You will go your way in safety. Your feet will not stumble. God will be your guarantor." In the fiscal crisis which is on everyone's mind, with all the checks and balances in California governance that weigh us down, help us to take off our ideological glasses which prevent us from seeing the obvious but cast out solutions. Deliver us from going around the mazes of our own constructions and take us instead into the freedom of decision-making. Guide us so that our feet do not stumble, that we may take the state of California forward with the integrity that will allow God to be our guarantor. For in God we trust, and in God we are not dismayed. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Members, we're on privileges of the floor. Senator Cox is recognized at his desk.
Mr. President, members, I rise today to adjourn in memory of Jim Purcell of Fair Oaks. Jim sadly passed away last week from a stroke. I knew Jim and his family for many years. Jim was my neighbor in Fair Oaks, and he ran my campaign for county supervisor and was my chief of staff at the county for 4 years. Members, I knew I could always count on Jim to keep his word. Jim was a Rotarian and served twice as the president of Fair Oaks Rotary. You know, whether it was through a business dealing or work in the community, Jim loved to bring people together, and no situation was too tough for Jim to handle. Jim will be missed by his wife Beverly and his son Christopher, and I ask that we adjourn in memory of Jim Purcell.
Thank you, Senator Cox. If you can please bring this to the desk. Senator Hollingsworth, you're recognized at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. A Republican caucus in the coffee shop, please.
Senator Hollingsworth is called for a Republican caucus. Senator Steinberg is recognized at Ms. Negrete McLeod's desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll have a Democratic caucus.
Members,
in the Matty Room.
the Pro Tem has called for a Democratic caucus in the Matty Room.
Calderon, Cedillo, Cogdill, Corbett, Correa, Cox, Denham, DeSaulnier, Ducheney, Dutton, Flores, Hancock, Harmon, Hollingsworth, Huff, Kehoe, Leno, Liu, Lowenthal, Maldonado, Negrete McLeod, Oropesa, Padilla, Pavley, Price, Romero, Runner, Semidian, Steinberg, Strickland, Walters, Wiggins, Wolk, Wright, Weiland, Yee.
Members, a quorum is present. Senator Ducheney, you're recognized at your desk.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members, I'd like to move to adopt amendments to Senate Bills 29, 30, and 31. I believe, do we need to move into 3X? Have we moved into 3X yet? These are 3X bills. We need to...
Yes, Senator Ducheney, before you begin the motion, at this time the regular session will stand in recess and the third extraordinary session will now be convened. Senator Ducheney, your motion is now in order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Again, Senate Bills 29, 30, and 31, and Assembly Bills 2 and 4 in the 3X session. I would ask that we adopt the amendments that are at the desk. Is there any
objection to adopting the amendments? Seeing, hearing none.
Oh, moving right along. Okay.
The amendments are adopted. Senator Ducheney.
If the amendments are adopted, I'm done, right? No, refer them.
David.
I don't have to go to the... I would then request unanimous consent to suspend Rule 29.3 so the measures can be taken up in mock-up form.
Without objection. Senator. Jeez.
Well, now it's late. The part you wanted roll call on was...
Where's Greg? I need Greg.
Members, the third extraordinary session will now be recessed. We're going to be moving. Senator Ducheney moves to move into
you can take a
Budget Committee as a whole, and we are still in extraordinary session.
No, they skipped that one. The roll call vote could be taken on the 29.3. If you want to object to that. No, that's the one we're on now. You want a roll call on that? On the 29.3 motion, that's fine. No, we did that without objection. All right, back to the beginning. Let's try again. All right, now that everybody's paying attention,
Senator Ducheney
I would try again.
Moves to adopt the amendments.
I would move to adopt the amendments to Senate Bills 29, 30, 31, and Assembly Bills 2 and 4. Is there an objection?
Members, any objection? Let's go ahead and call the roll on this. Majority of vote, those present and voting, will the Secretary please call the roll?
Onnested, Alquist, aye. Ashburn, no. Benoit, Calderon, aye. Cedillo, aye. Cogdill, no. Corbett, aye. Correa, Cox, no. Denham, DeSaulnier, aye. Ducheney, aye. Dutton, no. Flores,
Aye.
aye. Hancock, aye. Harmon, no. Hollingsworth, Huff, Kehoe, aye. Leno, Liu, aye. Lowenthal, aye. Maldonado, Negrete McLeod, aye. Oropesa, Padilla, aye. Pavley, aye. Price, aye. Romero, aye. Runner, Semidian, aye. Steinberg, aye. Strickland, no. Walters, no. Wiggins, aye. Did you see Wiggins? Wolk, aye. Wright, aye. Weiland, no. Yee, aye. Runner, no. Denham, no. Hollingsworth, no.
Okay.
Oropesa, aye. Benoit, no. Leno, aye. Huff, no.
Ayes 23, noes 13. The amendments are adopted. Senator Ducheney.
Mr. President and members, I would now move to re-refer the measures to the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee.
Senator DeCheney requests that the measures be sent to the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee. Would the Secretary please call the roll? Majority vote.
Onnested? Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Benoit? No. Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Aye. Cox? Denham? DeSaulnier? Aye. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? No. Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? Smidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye. Ashburn, no. Denham, no. Runner, no.
Okay. It's better stick right here. Ayes 25, noes 12. The measure passes. Senator DeCheney, you're recognized at your desk.
We now, I believe, need to recess the session.
Yes,
and
members,
convene
at this time the
committee.
Senate will stand in recess. The Budget and Fiscal Review Committee will now be in session. Senator DeCheney.
The motion of the committee, before the committee, would be to pass these bills to the floor as amended. Do pass as amended. So it's a committee motion.
Okay. Secretary, please call the roll.
Onnested? Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Benoit? No. Ashburn, no. Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Cox? No. Denham? No. DeSaulnier? Aye. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? No. Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Smidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye.
Ayes 23, noes 14. The motion is adopted. Members, at this time, the Budget and Fiscal Review Committee will stand adjourned and the Senate will reconvene. Senator DeCheney, you're recognized at your desk.
Well, I would request unanimous consent to suspend Senate Rule 29.3 so these measures can now be taken up in mock-up form.
Okay. Members, is there any objection to this? Senator Harmon objects. Would the Secretary please call the roll? 21 vote.
Onnested? Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Benoit? No. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Calderon, aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Cox? No. Denham? No. DeSaulnier? Aye. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? No. No. Flores?
Aye.
Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? No. Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? Negrete McLeod? Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Smidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Aye.
Ayes 23, no 13. The motion is passed. Senator Ducheney. Senator Steinberg is recognized at his desk.
The main one.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. In a moment, I will turn the mic over to Senator Ducheney to present the bills, but I did want to present a brief overview as to why we are here today. Members, the clock is ticking. In 37 hours, if we do not take action either on a bipartisan basis, under the two-thirds rule, or under a majority vote rule if necessary, if we don't take action, we will lose $3 billion in savings as a result of agreed-upon cuts to public education. In addition, in 37 hours, if we don't act under the two-thirds rule or under a majority vote rule and take action, the state comptroller has promised to begin issuing IOUs. IOUs are high-interest loans. They're payday loans. They're payday loans. And here is the consequence to the people of California. State operations, primarily vendor payments, vendors will lose $424 million. Small business vendors, $141 million. Capital outlay, construction, transportation, $364 million. Personal income tax refunds, $140 million. Corporate tax refunds, $58 million. On top of the fact that the poor and the vulnerable, whether they be Social Security disability recipients, CalWORKS recipients, won't receive their payments either. Members, you can only control what you can control. And what we control here is the action on one floor of the co-equal branch of government. And this isn't the first time we've been on this red carpet over the last several days. We started last week and we presented to you a two-thirds option to cut $11 billion from the budget. The next day, we presented to you the current year package that includes $3 billion in education cuts and deferrals, which are absolutely essential to avoid these IOUs. And we didn't get the requisite two-thirds to do that. The next day, we took the governor's one-time revenue sources together with some that we added, and we put them on the floor. And we did not get the requisite two-thirds votes in order to pass that measure. And so now we are 37 hours away from the deadline. We still have not seen, I know it's a little bit of a cliche here, we still have not seen a plan from the minority caucus that has not voted for any of the measures that I just described. And so, on behalf of the people of California, we choose to do everything in our power to take the action that we have the ability to take to avoid this catastrophe. Now, some of you in debate may say, well, what are you doing to try to work this out? And so I want to use my moment here to give an update on our negotiations with the governor and with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. For yesterday, we spent many hours on the Sunday together with the administration, and, you know, I want to maintain, of course, the sanctity of that of those sorts of discussions. But I think it is very fair to characterize the negotiations in this way. The governor will not sign a $24 billion package. He will not sign the 3 bills that would avoid the cash crisis unless we do 2 things over the next 37 hours. One, make deeper cuts to the bone when it comes to the safety net in this state, and or 2, agree to a series of policy reforms in the health and human service area that are worth discussing, but frankly require us to act in a responsible way by thinking through and considering the impact of those reforms. Won't sign a $24 billion solution and won't even consider a $3 billion solution that would avoid the cash crisis unless we cut to the bone around health and human services. Now, I've respected and respect, though I disagree with your marker around the issue of taxation. That's well known around here. It's well known. And we fight about it a lot. And what I've said to the governor, we said on this floor, and we'll say it again here this morning, we stand with and for 950,000 kids who are receiving health insurance. We stand with people who are trying to get off public assistance and go to work. We stand with college students who need some scholarship money to be able to complete their education and be a part of this society and this economy. And we stand with the elderly and the disabled who need in-home care. And we've made cuts in all those areas. But we're not cutting deeper. Just as you've told us to hear you loudly, hear us loudly. It's not where we will go. And so we believe we can get to $24 billion with this package that's on the floor today. If you don't like this package, we believe we can get to 24 without some of the elements that are in this package today. But we are not going to allow these 37 hours to pass without doing everything we can on the floor of this Senate to avoid the IOU outcome, which we all know would be wrong for this state, especially when we have the tools and the opportunity to do it. And so it's in that spirit that we take up these majority vote bills today, because it's frankly the only thing at this point that we can control. Senator DeCheney.
Members, we have other mics up. Senator DeCheney, you want to allow
I
other
wanted
debate?
to present on one of the bills.
Yes, Senator DeCheney.
That we'd have a bill
Secretary,
on the floor
please
to discuss.
Read the
For all those mics to debate. SB 16?
Clerk.
16.
Secretary, please
The
read.
concurrence bill.
Senate Bill 16 by Senator DeCheney, an act relating to the state budget and making an appropriation therefore.
Senator DeCheney.
Thank you very much. Mr. President and members, this bill is substantially similar to the bill that we discussed a week ago, or last Wednesday, feels like a week ago. It makes major revisions to the 9-10 budget, which was passed in February, in order to bring that budget back into balance. It contains over $11 billion in cuts. Because it has now been converted into a majority vote bill in order to ensure its passage to the governor so that he can have the opportunity to sign something that would, in fact, keep us from the edge of this crisis. It does have a little bit of erosion in those savings. Because it is a majority vote bill now, we lose $18 million in savings due to the loss of quality assurance fee revenue. We lose $17 million in cost due to the loss of various appropriations and deficiencies and reappropriations. We lose some $7 million in proposed IHSS savings that the governor and others have argued for some time. However, in order to get, but it is only a total erosion of about $40 million. This is the same bill. There has revisions that are over 50% adoptions of the governor's May revision proposals. It accepts at over 90% of the original governor proposals, at least in part. And as the pro tem indicated earlier, the four things it does not do that were in the governor's May revise it does not eliminate the Healthy Families Program, kicking 950,000 children, leaving 950,000 children without health care. It does not eliminate the CalWORKS program, which has been enormously successful in the state, reducing welfare caseloads over 50% in the 10 years since it's been enacted, until this year with the recession when caseload started to tick up. But it does not say to those 500,000 single mothers that you shall be without child care, you shall be without job services, and you shall be without a home. It does not say to our in-home supported living families, seniors and disabled folks, that 90% of you shall no longer receive services as the governor proposed. Nor does it completely make the SSI SSP check so low that people could lose their rental housing. It does reduce it in all of the categories described. It also does not say to 77,000 students ready to enter college this fall that you can no longer do so because the finances are not there. But what it does do in all of those areas is reduce those programs. People have talked about cost containment, understanding that we have less revenue that we need to cut. In all of those programs, there are reductions. $70 million in Healthy Families, over $250 million in CalWORKS. Substantial cuts to education that we've talked about all week. Over $100 million in savings in IHSS in a more targeted way. Again, members, not wholesale elimination. And that's the major difference between this bill and the proposals that the governor put out in May, in his 3 different May revisions. It does close the gap with some taxes targeted, the oil severance, the oil extraction tax, the tobacco tax, the governor's proposed fee to support firefighters, CAL FIRE and emergency services in this state, that tax, the governor's tax, and the park vehicle pass that we discussed last Friday. All of those are in here in a separate measure that will come up as a trailer bill in exchange for the 18 cents that is currently the gas excise tax and a backfill of that with a fee. This, members, is a complete package. It does, with all of the trailers and all of the components, create a $24 billion solution. It is not the prettiest solution. It is not one that a lot of us would choose, but it was an effort, and it has been a very sincere effort, to compromise with some very dramatic proposals. People need to see it in that spirit. And the governor needs to understand there is an option that is, because it's all cuts and not appropriations, that these bills can be passed with a majority vote. It is before us now in that fashion because, as the pro tem pointed out, the clock is ticking. We must get something out by tomorrow. The only way we see to do that at the moment is with a majority vote. And therefore, members, I'd ask for your aye vote.
Senator Strickland is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I'm often asked, I was out of the legislature for 4 years. I served 6 years in the State Assembly. And I'm often asked in my district, what's the difference? What's it like being in the State Senate? And I allude to a movie that many of you have seen by Bill Murray. It's called Groundhog Day, where you live the same day over and over and over again. Members, we need to break that cycle. I firmly believe the best legislators are not the ones that give the best speeches on the floor. They're not the ones that give the best speeches in the district, but the ones that actually listen. Listen to the people in the state of California. Listen to people in your community. Members, we just had an election this last May where the idea of higher taxes was, before the voters. And the voters overwhelmingly turned them down. And they said, you know what? You need to live within your means. And I believe that our caucus has listened to that vote in May. And we don't need to go through this constant Groundhog Day over and over again where you try to do the majority vote or you try to raise taxes. Simply, it's not going to happen. Many say that this bill right here is not constitutional. In fact, I would bet that the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, some other groups out there, would do a referendum if this got the governor's signature. But the fact of the matter is we're doing this as a drill because everybody here knows, everybody last night in the Assembly knows, that the governor's already said that he would veto this measure. So we're doing this. In fact, I was pretty optimistic about 3 weeks ago, and I thought, for once in a long time, that people actually listened to the voters of California, and they were going to come forward, and they were going to actually reduce spending. The governor's been steadfast on saying that he wouldn't raise taxes because it was already in the agreement in February that that was the only taxes you needed. But now I guess that agreement in February doesn't matter, and we're going to put before us another massive tax increase. And let's also look at your cuts. Many of your cuts that you propose are just getting backfilled from the federal government, so they're really not cuts. In fact, they hurt our structural deficit moving forward. So I think it would make sense if we're going to look to the future that we fix the problems today in order to get a fresh start. Because, quite frankly, we need to turn this economy around. And the California legislature needs to stop being the economic development agencies for states like Arizona, Nevada, and Florida. We need to be more job-friendly, more business-friendly here in the state of California. We need to do whatever we can for tax incentives to create jobs. That's the only way we get out of this budget mess, members, is by creating an economic environment where we can create jobs. We have the highest unemployment that we've had since the Great Depression. And many of the reasons why we have that, yes, we have a national economy that's gone down, but many of the reasons why we have that here is because of the very actions that's done in this legislature. Members, what we need to do as a state government is not different than what families, hardworking families, are doing right now today at the kitchen table. Many businesses, small businesses, are going down and they're looking at their receipts. Everybody's looking, and they don't spend more than they take in. The bottom line is, if a family spends more than they take in, they're going to have a problem. And if you keep doing it over a long period of time, that problem spirals out of control. Many businesses are making tough decisions across the state. Many hardworking California families are doing it. We need to live within our means as a state government. We can't spend more than we take in. So let's have a state government that we can afford. And, this majority vote tax increase is going nowhere. You know it's going nowhere. You know the governor's going to veto it. And even if the governor signed it, there'll be a referendum, and you're not going to realize the revenue that you think you're going to realize. Not to mention, if you raise taxes and this goes through, more jobs will leave the state of California, and you'll actually get less revenue back. So, members on the other side of the aisle, I encourage you, vote no on this measure, because you know the governor's going to veto it. Let's sit down. Let's work with the governor. Let's all work together. Let's reduce the spending in California, and let's fix the problem today, because if we don't fix the problems that we have today, as the governor said, the $24 billion problem, if we don't fix that problem today, we have that structural deficit that will be even worse down the line. So, members, I urge your no vote. Let's sit down. Let's negotiate. Let's get government back within its means.
Senator Renner is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I think our comments are going to be obviously to the package as a whole. We're kind of a bit confused here in terms of what's coming and what's going. And I think that obviously we need to talk about this as a total solution and the total bills that are going to be before us maybe in one way or another today. You know, the fact is that this is an end run around what the people of California have clearly stated. Clearly, the Californians made a decision a few weeks ago in regards to the fact that they said, we are taxed enough. We don't want to write any more checks. We want our California legislators to help solve the problem. And so I know we've struggled with the idea of raising taxes here as a way to solve that problem. But in one sense, this, where you go ahead and not only end run around the voters of last month, but you do an end run around the state constitution at the same time, knowing that there's no chance for this plan to succeed, is very disingenuous and is actually not helping as that clock continues to tick. Let me just walk through what it is that you have put on the table. First of all, a tax increase for every Californian. Any Californian who has any kind of withholding done is going to pay more money out of their weekly paycheck. That's what's going to happen with this proposal. As a result of that, every Californian has less money to spend as they go through their daily requirements. In addition to that, you've added a whole other group of people, and that is those individuals who are self-employed contractors. And you tax them regardless as to whether or not they even have a California tax liability. You know, there's a proper place and a way for that to be done. And you ignore that and instead go ahead and assume that everybody owes the state of California. And then when they don't, well, then you'll just give the money back to them afterwards. But every one of them has less money to spend for their needs and their family. In addition to that, you create a bigger problem with the structural deficit. You took focus, for instance, on a tobacco tax. Every one of us knows by our own experience here that that is a declining revenue source, that each year less and less money comes into the state as a result of tobacco tax. So what do? You go ahead and balance a budget, try to balance a budget with it. On top of that, you go ahead and continue state spending, knowing that it only creates out-year pressures for new taxes on Californians. The other issue you do is you add new tax to Californians for every Californian at the pump when they go to fill up their tank. The fact is, you may think that this extraction tax is one paid by corporations, but I got news for you. It gets passed on. And every Californian who goes to fill up at the tank, at the pump, will pay the additional dollars. Now, what that also means is jobs lost for California, because there'll be a shift of workers out of California, out of that industry, to other places. Now, the interesting issue is that may not only just be to other states. You know, I wrote a piece the other day called the Hugo Chavez Empowerment Act. Because what you do is you do shift oil producers in other countries an advantage over California pumping. Now, I don't think that that's good for California economy, and I don't believe it's very good for Californians in general. The other issue that you do in here is, as you look at how it is that this is balanced, is that you go ahead and you continue to do what we have talked about time and time again, and that is a list of dangerous felons that get released into neighborhoods. Now, again, balanced carefully, unfortunately, with the idea of additional money against proven programs that local law enforcement uses to keep their community safe. More felons, less law enforcement. Doesn't sound like a formula I need for my neighborhoods. Now, the other issue that I think that we deal with here is that we continue to experiment with this plan. There's no doubt in my mind, and I think in many of the rest of us, at least on this side of the aisle, that this continues to drive California into a longer, deeper recession. I know you have great concerns about many of the social programs that you're focusing in on here. But the fact is, in order for those programs to move forward successfully into the future at any amount, it depends on a vital California economy. Without that, everything in California is at risk. I find it interesting that there is an issue of bipartisanship here. Only it's not bipartisan in support of these bills. There's actually bipartisan support against these bills. I watched the votes over in the Assembly. I noticed that not even all the Democrats could vote for these bills. Now, I would assume that probably the same is on this floor. I assume there'll probably be some Democrats that can't vote for this package. So I guess in the sense, I'm asking you to join us in a bipartisan effort to defeat this very bad plan. Vote no.
Senator Padilla. Senator Maldonado is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, here we are again, and we're pointing fingers at each other and, in essence, trying to deflect some blame. Let's stop blaming people, and let's just get our job done. Right now, we're going through a process, and that's this budget that we have before us today, SB 16. We're going through a process that we all know isn't going to go anywhere. So what can come out of this process? We might offend each other, say things that we might regret tomorrow. But the most important thing that's going to come out of this process is that we're taking our eye off the ball on what we should be focused on at this moment, and that's negotiating to get this budget done in the next 37 hours or 36 hours. So we can focus on debates, or whatever you want to call this. We can focus on debates. We can focus on this exercise. Let's focus on negotiating. We're close. We've been here before. I've been trying for days, Mr. President and members, to work with both sides on a principled compromise. And I really believe that we're close. I really do. But it's that last one that is the hardest, and I know that. The governor in his May revise called for $16 billion worth of cuts. The conference committee has $11.4 billion worth of cuts. 11.2, 11, get it to 12. At the end of the day, why can't we come to the middle? Why can't we come to the middle on the governor's May revise and the conference committee report and come up with some good reforms that keep us out of getting into this mess once again? Members, I've run the numbers. Fact of the matter, there's a lot of members in this House that have run the numbers. And I know the numbers work. We're just taking a position. But if we come together as Californians, instead of Republicans and Democrats, I know we can get our job done. I don't want to decimate healthy families. We're not going to decimate healthy families. And I know that we don't have to decimate healthy families. I don't want to eliminate the Cal Grants. No one in this building wants to eliminate the Cal Grants, and we know we're not going to eliminate the Cal Grants. And I know that we don't have to eliminate the Cal Grants. I don't want to close my state parks. And I know we don't have to close our state parks. I don't want to end CalWorks. We talk about it as a safety net. I agree. But I know that if we put some good reforms in place or start the framework of good reforms in place, we don't have to end CalWorks. We can make it work if we reform it. And we know it. I don't want to decimate IHSS, a program that keeps family members together, taking care of our loved ones, not warehousing our family members, keeping them in our homes, taking care of our loved ones. I don't want to decimate it. We're not going to decimate it. We know we don't have to decimate it, but we need to reform it. And we know that. We have to stop the fraud that takes the money away from the voiceless and the vulnerable population of California and puts it in the pockets of people that game the system. I know we can reform it. Why can't we start the framework or the conversation of reforming it now? I think we can. I know we can. Members, I know we can do this. We've been here before. Nobody wants to be in this position, and I realize that. These are tough times. And I know that you feel that you've done enough. I know that. I know that you feel that we've cut enough. Let's get to the real meat here. we have to cut a little bit more and protect the safety net. We can do it, but we stake our positions and we don't want to negotiate. We all know what has to happen. And I say that because it wasn't long ago that I kept hearing the same thing. 36 hours, 42 hours, 56 hours, 24 hours. The state is going to go into bankruptcy. We're going off the cliff. Guess what I did? I did what the Democrats and the governor wanted to do. I raised taxes. I said bankruptcy was not an option to the people of California. We were going to pay our bills, and we were going to move the state forward. We weren't going to fail. And now, I'm here asking you, the rest of these members of this House and the other House, to cut a little bit more and to put some little reforms in place that will never allow us to come here again. Not just kick the can one more time. We can do it in 36 hours. We've done it before. This is a year of tough choices and tough votes. Let's face fear in the face here. You think it's a victory for me to ask people to cut more? You think it's a victory for Republicans to cut programs? You think we go home and we do cartwheels because we cut government? No, I don't, at least not for this Republican. But I know what needs to happen. And we all know what needs to happen. So, we keep hearing this May 19th election, and I campaigned every day for that darn thing. Every single day. I campaigned to raise more taxes because my state was going into bankruptcy. We had organizations out there beating me up saying it was the wrong time to do it, and then after we come back here, they run ads to raise taxes. Come on. No tax. We heard that the message said no taxes. That the election was no more cuts. That the election was no more borrowing. That the election was no new taxes. The election was get your job done, members of the legislature. This is too confusing for me to do at home. You do your job. Here is our opportunity. We got 36 hours. We can do it. I'm not asking you guys to compromise on your principles. I'm not. But I'm asking the members of this House to come up with a principled compromise that puts California first.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Abel. Thank you for not just the statement that you gave right now, because you're absolutely right. We have to put Californians first. But thank you for the work you did in February, the work you did coming into May 19th. And it is hard, I think, sometimes for us to get out of our own party line skin a little bit and meet in an uncomfortable middle place to do what we know is best for the state, because nobody ran for the Senate to cut needed programs. Nobody runs for the Senate to raise taxes either. But once we're here, and regardless of how we got here, we have a fundamental responsibility. When we take the oath of office to support and defend not only the Constitution of the United States and the state of California, but to represent our constituents and all Californians to the best of our ability, we have to look deep in our hearts and deep in our minds to make those tough decisions, because the tough decisions, the right decisions, the necessary decisions are not very often the easy decisions. I wasn't going to speak this morning, certainly not on this item, but I felt compelled because people keep raising this May 19th election, and I need to respectfully disagree with some of my colleagues. I think it's convenient to interpret that on May 19th, the voters sent us a message, and the message is this: no new taxes, no additional taxes, no new taxes, etc. Maybe I'm one of 40, but I need to share what my experience was leading up to May 19th. The second most frequently question I got from the public, from anywhere between my constituents to pretty thoughtful, intelligent attorney groups and everywhere in between. The second most frequently asked question I got about the May 19th election was, what is this? What does this do? It was kind of a complicated thing, right? Between the spending cap and extending taxes, and if 1A passes, then 1B stands a chance, and all this stuff. I think that is why the measures failed. The most frequently asked question I got about the May 19th election was not taxes or no taxes or spending cap or no spending cap. The most frequently asked question I got about the May 19th election is, why do we have to vote on this stuff? We elect our representatives to go tackle this. Don't bring it back to the voters. You guys figure it out. Now, you guys figuring it out is a far cry from no additional taxes. See, I think, and we can look at cities and counties and jurisdictions throughout the state of recent examples when voters are willing to tax themselves more, whether it's through a local sales tax, parcel tax, whatever it may be, whether it's for the city, for the county, for a school district, or whatever. I think voters at times are willing to take on that additional responsibility when it's clear that it's all about achieving the quality of life that we all want. So I don't buy the notion that on May 19th the voters sent us the message of no additional taxes. In fact, there was some polling, some public surveys done in the wake of the election, with specific questions being asked as to why people voted against 1A and the other initiatives, and followed up with specific questions about should the budget be balanced through cuts only, or should it be a balanced approach to balancing the budget? Shouldn't be a surprise. Big majority of California believes we should take this balanced approach that we speak about every time we're here in this tough situation. Surveys, plural, went beyond that and floated out some specific areas of possible revenue increases. One of them, and as you all know, I authored SB 600, a tobacco tax increase of $1.50 per pack, was supported in these surveys more than 70% of the people. Specifically, the people who voted no on 1A on May 19th that were part of the survey support the tobacco tax increase by about 63, 64%. And overall, well above 70, well above the two-thirds threshold in the state of California. And so it's trying to take that information, be mindful of the proposals that we've put together that has brought us to these proposals being before us today. Now, when Abel spoke just a minute ago, he said again that it's since February, since May 19th, there's been big proposed cuts well beyond what Democrats would like to do, but we know it's necessary. It's our fiduciary responsibility to try to keep the state solvent. It may not be to the level that the governor is asking or proposing, but it's close. And maybe we're going to have to stretch and do a little bit more in areas that we would prefer not to. But if the logic makes sense for that, then it also applies to the other side of the equation. Because Republicans, just a couple of you colleagues, were willing to stretch back in February and support taxes as part of a balanced budget balancing approach. And so as we're being called to stretch a little bit more, to do a little bit more in cuts, then I think it's only fair that we ask you to consider and support going a little bit further, a little bit more than you'd like to, a little bit more than you may be comfortable with, the revenue side of our equation. And I think the other elements are on the table, not just the IHSS-specific reform bills that Senator Maldonado has presented. But let's also be clear about something. When we talk about beyond the cuts and specific areas and what's on the table and what's negotiable and what's not, I also hear from our Republican colleagues that it's about efficiencies, and it is, about effectiveness of programs, and it is. It's about not just performance-based budgeting, but priority-based budgeting. And so don't misinterpret our stances on CalWORKs, on Cal Grants, on healthy families as being stubborn and not willing to negotiate. It's our way of saying to you, these are our priorities. Maintaining the safety net for vulnerable Californians is our priority. There's other rooms in the budget that we can and will have to work through to arrive at a solution. Let me close by saying this. The other piece that I hear a lot about this morning, beyond just what voters said or didn't say on May 19th, is this whole, I think overused at this point, live within your means, live within your means, live within your means. I've shared with a lot of you my story. Some of you have heard it from, over the last 10 years of my career, of my upbringing, neighborhood called Pacoima in the city of Los Angeles. My father was a short order cook, and my mother would clean houses. A modest household, to say the least. So yeah, I'm familiar with tough budget times. I'm familiar with living when there's not a lot of money to pay for the things that you'd like to be able to pay for and having to make tough decisions. But you know what happened when we were having one of those months or one of those weeks? It wasn't just my folks deciding what we weren't going to be able to buy, even though we really wanted to. At times, it meant, where else can we scrape up some money? And if it meant my dad taking a second job for a while, that's what he did. And if it meant my mom, whether it was through a garage sale or, working with some of the neighbors, that's what she did. If it meant going out after hours and collecting cardboard and newspapers and aluminum cans, even if it was just for another 10, 20 bucks, that's what we did. We didn't just look at the cut side of our household budget. If we had a chance to augment our revenues, we did. And that's what we're proposing that we do here today. Maintain our priorities, some fundamental values for all of Californians, and balance the budget with more cuts than we'd like to do. And we're just asking that we also balance that out with a little bit more on the revenue side than maybe you'd like to do. And as Abel said, if we can both get a little bit out of our comfort zone and meet in that uncomfortable place in the middle, then we'll have done right and fair by all Californians.
Senator Denham.
Well, Senator Padilla, I'm glad to hear that in your family during tough times you had garage sales and you sold stuff that you didn't need. This does none of that. But I think it's an important point that we discuss in the future. I think the main point here today, Senator Strickland said this is deja vu all over again. I don't see it. This is something we've never seen before. There is no attempt at bipartisanship. There is no pretending that there's bipartisanship. The pro tem just said the action that we have the ability to take. According to the pro tem, you have the ability to take this action today. But I want to read something quickly here to you. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California. This is very clear, black and white in here. You're ignoring the Constitution, Article 13A, which says any changes in state taxes enacted for the purpose of increasing revenues by not less than a 2/3 vote. Article 19B restates it again. It's very clear. This will go to the courts. This will be undone. We will be back here again. It may be a long summer. It may be a long fall. This situation could certainly get a lot worse and probably will. At some point, It will be deja vu all over again. At some point, we'll get back to working together into a bipartisan agreement. I didn't like what happened in February. I didn't vote for it. But you can't say that it wasn't bipartisan. You can't say that we didn't work together. You can't say that there weren't some Republican votes and many Democrat votes. The bipartisanship in this will be a no on this bill. And I'll look forward to working together again when you're ready.
Senator Benoit.
Members, I haven't risen to speak on this topic much. A lot of what has been said already in the speakers this morning is part of what I would say, many of them exactly what I feel. But I'd like to talk just a little bit about a reality check on this House today, because I think there's 4 realities that we have to deal with. I'm not a real reality TV kind of guy. I thought American Idol was an out-of-work American someplace. But there are some realities that we need to deal with. Reality number 1, consensus is required. We've got to get together with a plan to avoid a horrible outcome for the state of California. There's no avoiding it. The Constitution requires it. Today's Constitution says that we have to have a vote between all the Republicans and the Democrats that has to be signed by the governor. Some in this room would like to change that, but that is the reality today. So we have to come to that reality. The majority decides what comes up on the floor, the tenor of the bills that we're seeing here today. The majority can decide when and where we're going to meet. The majority decides that we're going to have 6 Democrats and 4 Republicans on a committee that's supposed to come up with a consensus plan that doesn't, because it's controlled by the majority. I get all that. But the reality says at the end we have to have a meeting of the minds between both sides and the governor to move this situation forward. Second reality, taxes are not the answer. You know, we can debate what the people said on May 19th. There was a general consensus after the February budget proposal was put together among all parties that we've gone a long ways on taxes. We're not going to go any further. We can't go any further. There are certainly a lot of people who will talk about the impact of our extremely high tax burden on jobs. Going forward, we all know that there's going to be a big push to where do we start jobs again after the recession hopefully winds down and we start into where is the job creation going to occur? Is it going to occur in the highest tax, most heavily regulated state in the nation? Probably not. But we've already got those high taxes. We can't go further on taxes. Reality number 2 is taxes is not an answer. Reality number 3, borrowing is not the answer. We have got a tremendous debt in the state of California already. We have $69.4 billion of outstanding bond indebtedness today. Voters of this state have approved another $55 billion on top of that. But we owe $69 billion today. We can't possibly think of borrowing our way out, and if we did, who's going to lend a state in this kind of trouble more money long-term today? And at what cost if they do? Reality number 3 is borrowing is not the answer. Reality 4 is spending reductions is how we have to balance this budget. You know, we've had a lot of discussion about what reductions and where and can we do it and whose ideology is going to be impacted. It really doesn't matter. We have to do it because that's the situation we're in. You know, it's not as dramatic as some people would paint. You know, we've got it. Let's think of a hypothetical family, a couple of moderately successful union employees in the state of California, combined income about $103,000. If they had a setback, if one of them got cut back in their hours, furloughed, and they determined that their income this year is going to be $87,000 instead of $103,000, that's a $16,000 adjustment to their budget. Not a $37 million adjustment, as has been stated on this floor that we've already cut $37 billion in the state budget. It would be a $16 billion cut for that $103,000 family to get down to $87,000 in income. That's what we're faced with. As a state, we have to bring that general fund spending that we thought we were going to do 103 last year down to about 87. That's the proposal that will meet the governor's requirement. And I think we need to get to that, and we need to do it soon. 4 realities, but they start with the first one, and that is consensus is required. It's time to quit bringing day after day another proposal that has the majority support but doesn't bring the consensus that's required to move the ball forward. So let's please get together, start talking reality. It's best for the state of California. We need to do it now. Thank you.
Senator Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I'll grant for the sake of argument that you can take away from the election last month different interpretations, but I don't think that any of us would argue that it was not exactly a very strong vote of confidence in the legislature and the leadership in Sacramento. So it's sort of difficult for us on our side of the aisle to understand why we would respond to the crisis that is at hand by increasing the level of skepticism from the people of this state by essentially saying that we're going to pass an illegal tax increase, an unconstitutional tax increase, that by all measures, by all recognitions, we know is likely to be challenged in court, maybe even referended, which either or both of those actions were to even be signed by the governor, would mean that those revenues would not come into the state coffers, and it would make the problem even worse. So the question that we then have to ask ourselves on our side of the aisle is, how serious is this effort today, or is this just the 4th day of another political exercise? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. But I want to get across to you today that the real question we have to answer after this afternoon is, where do we go from here? We have a real crisis bearing down on us in a couple of days. We know you don't want to see IOUs issued, and we don't want to see IOUs issued. We have talked about the need to address the entire $24 billion problem. The governor has said much the same thing. Those IOUs, if they start going out, they affect the very programs that you are talking about. From our perspective, we share that concern. We also understand that they affect the fiscal stability of the state for a very long period of time because of the downgrading to our credit, which means that capital and investment is going to be tough to create jobs in California. So we have two sides of the same coin that we are both concerned about. I think you're concerned about that as well. We don't want to see those IOUs go out. So with the governor, and the President Pro Tem has mentioned this, we have extended the hand of compromise about some negotiations to come to agreement before the midnight deadline on some reforms to make government more efficient, to make those deliveries of services more efficient, less fraud-ridden, so that the people who we're trying to direct those dollars to actually get more of those precious dollars. We're talking about reforms that would lower the cost of government over the long term, billions of dollars. Very simple things that the legislative language already exists for, that has already had a hearing, at least in public discourse, but we could do some hearings on, and that we could send with those measures in the short term to avoid those IOUs. We've extended that hand of negotiation and compromise to avoid, forgive me for bringing back the bus, Senator Cox, to avoid the bus going off the cliff. That's one part of the equation. The other part is that the same time that we're looking at that, the same time that we're engaging in the 4th day of a political exercise, we are now looking at less time, less ability to address that $24 billion problem. And let me just tell you that we recognize you have made some very tough decisions. There are cuts in there that we've said repeatedly we don't like. But let me let you understand that we know they are horrific to you. They are things that you never thought you would ever have to do when you were elected to the legislature. And we know that that's going to continue until this is resolved as a heart-wrenching exercise for you. Also understand that we know that from our perspective, there are going to be things in the eventual resolution of this that we would never consider voting for, accounting things, moving money around, borrowing from funds, gimmicks that none of us would ever think we would vote for when we were elected to the legislature as well. We know that that's going to happen. So on this second part, this much larger, equally important part, let me also just tell you that where we go from here should not be that we take from this political exercise and the points that we've each made on either side, and we go back to our corners, we try and figure out another angle. What we have to do is we have to sit down and we have to figure out how to fix this. We have to sit down and figure out what is going to be a lasting fix so that you on your side of the aisle understand that you're not going to have to be coming back and making those tough decisions later on in this fiscal year. And that we, on our side of the aisle, understand that we're not going to be coming back with no choice but to raise taxes at the end of this year. That's where we can find a solution to this problem. That's what we need to be doing to fix this, and we need to be doing it very quickly and not wasting time on political exercises.
Senator Huff is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Senator Padilla had made a comment about constituents that were saying, why do we have to vote on this? And to be true, we all represent different constituencies. They have common denominators. But I will tell you, we had that on the ballot, and we asked them to make a decision because that was a negotiated settlement. Some of the decisions had to be made by the electorate because they'd been put in place by the electorate, and we wanted to redistribute some of those funds. For some of us who've taken pledges not to raise taxes, we didn't take a pledge not to let the people decide whether they wanted to tax themselves longer, and so we put 1A on the ballot. By the way, I'm getting recalled for that because they felt that was a violation of my pledge. So when it comes back to us and they say, you deal with it, whatever message you want to take away, my constituency, besides being angry with me for putting 1A on the ballot, is happy they had an opportunity to tell us, who they term Sacramento, live within your means. Don't come back to us to balance things. And so here we are again, and we on our side are still saying you got to cut further. Now, a lot of people have said the bottom line is, quote unquote, we don't know what the bottom line is. That's why we're back here again. We haven't found the bottom of this economy. We haven't found the bottom of our revenues. And each incremental time, we've all struggled and had painful decisions to make, and yet we're going to continue to have to make those. You would never have imagined that you would have even these cuts on the table back in February, or going back to last December or last September, because incrementally we've had to cut further. So, maybe what the answer to this is let's just reform some of these things that help build the jobs to get us down the road without looking at further problems and being back here and wrestling with yet more cuts. Does anybody think that next year is going to be any easier than this without the extension of 1A and those taxes that were in that? We've got at least a $15 billion program we're looking at in the out years. We haven't even started looking at the pension reform and taking care of that. But the Pro Tem was very eloquent in saying all the different constituencies that he stood for. What I didn't hear him say was that he stood for the taxpayer. And so I would like to one-up you and say we stand for all those same constituencies. We want to help them. I thought Senator Maldonado was very eloquent in what he said on that. But I want to also say that I stand for the middle-class taxpayer. I stand for that person that's out there struggling. It's upside down in a mortgage. He's been paying his bills, but he's lost $150,000 in value on that, and yet he's still paying it. He could walk away from it. He's got a kid in college, maybe. He's struggling to pay his bills. He's doing the right thing, and we say, by the way, we want you to pay just a little bit more. I stand for that small business owner that's already had to lay off some workers, who's living on his reserves that he has put aside, unlike the state. He's trying to figure out how to stay in business yet another year, and yet we're saying, we want you to pay a little bit more. I stand for the business community at large, who are strangled by regulations that we systematically put in place every day we are in session voting on bills. I stand for these guys because they are the job creators. They are the ones we are sending out of state with our strangling regulations. And by the way, they're paying some of the highest taxes in the nation. But truthfully, it's the regulations that they tell us they don't like the taxes, and that's a financial incentive to leave. But it's all these regulations that just make it so difficult to do business here. I stand with those guys. Unless we get them all on the same page, unless we get them back creating jobs, we're going to continue to slide. We're going to continue to go out the money tree. And by the way, that tree's been poisoned. It's no longer making fruit. You can't just keep going to the money tree. At some point, you got to start figuring out how to live within our means. And we all see that different ways. That's clear from the discussion that we have here. But I think that, I agree with what a lot of my colleagues have said about this. Being a majority vote bill flies in the face of the intent. The governor said he's going to veto it. But regardless, this is not the right way to go about it. It's not going to solve the problem. We'll be back here yet again because we haven't found the bottom. And I urge your no vote.
Seeing no further debate on this issue, Senator Cheney, you may close.
Members, there was and then there is, and remains before us for about 24 hours, a fairly simple answer to the immediate IOU crisis that got talked about. It is the three bills that we presented on Thursday. They remain available for reconsideration, and they do require a two-thirds vote because they must go into effect by tomorrow at midnight to be of any effect at all. Members, we are on the brink. That $3 billion will disappear from everybody's solutions. They are premised in this solution as well, if we do not act on those bills by tomorrow night. The larger question of the budget revisions that are necessary to bring us into full balance, again, we have a budget in place. This is not where often, I don't know about the rest of you, I actually remember receiving one of those IOUs in 1992 that I had to sit on for 3 or 4 months. I talked to somebody else the other day. I was an appellate attorney, and I received IOU in pay during 1992. Some people I talked to the other day said they framed theirs because that's about what it was worth. But we were able to keep them, and sooner or later you could cash them in. They're a bad option right now, as Senator Padilla and others, I think, described what occurs, Senator Steinberg, what it does to our credit rating in this economy at this time, in this situation. It is not an option we should pursue. This is a legislature, members, and what we are doing here is not a political exercise. It's an effort to actually present an option. It's an effort to do our job. This is a budget bill that holds together, that makes revisions, substantial reductions. And I want to kind of get to this. I think there's a lot of vague talk here going on about numbers. These aren't just about numbers. It's not as simple as saying, oh gosh, okay, well, let's just cut another $1 billion from somewhere. These are programs, members. We have cut so much over the last 10 years that because, again, the gimmicks, they come from intransigence on taxes. They come because the governor cut the VLF the day he walked in the door and decided to borrow the money the next year for the economic recovery bonds. And yes, we are responsible because we were complicit in those actions, and I don't deny that. But that's the revenue loss is what got us here. And there are things regardless of if we'd had that money, we still would be looking at some of the things we've done here to do cost containment over the last several years in any number of these programs. So if there are new ideas about that people failed to present in conference committee, I think everybody's been open to those. We all voted last week or 2 weeks ago for Senator Maldonado's bill on IHSS fraud. There's IHSS fraud in the very bill before us, members. We accepted the governor's proposal on IHSS fraud. Those measures are in here. They are contained within this as much as they were presented to us. Now, if the governor is trying to invent new ideas the day before the deadline, they're welcome, but I don't know that they get resolved before tomorrow. This one is complete. This is a complete budget package. It is a complete revision. It does all of the things that are necessary to get the House in order so that the controller can issue checks, so the IOUs can go forward. It does reduce education. It does reduce every program in the state. But it isn't so simple when you're down this low to just say it's a number. These are actual, you have to make substantial changes in programs, in who's affected, in eligibilities, are very complex. And I just say, you know, with Senator Maldonado, we don't want to close any of those things. We do not want any of that to happen. This bill covers those things, allows that. If there are extraneous issues, we should move on those. And if there are opportunities for efficiency in government, we should always be looking for those. But that is not today. Today is the 29th of June. And we need to pass the current year bills immediately, and we need to pass something, this version, because we can pass it with a majority vote, we're passing it to make sure that we've done our job to say we will make these revisions before July 1. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Onnested? No. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Benoit? No. Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? No. Cox? No. Denham? No. DeSaulnier? Duchesne? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores?
Aye.
Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? No. Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Semidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, no.
Ayes 22, no 17. The measure is passed. Senator Duchesne on the next bill.
Assembly Bill 19. Or Senate Bill 17, sorry.
Senate Bill 17.
Senate Bill 17, the concurrence.
Will the Secretary please read?
Senate Bill 17 by Senator Duchesne, an act relating to taxation.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members, this is not a tax increase bill, members. This is the tax administration bill. It is a trailer, adopts the governor's proposals that Senator Runner opposed in his earlier speech for withholding, implements withholding for independent contractors so that they can be equal. I heard that argument earlier, and, you know, every wage earner, including the state employees, who the governor so much likes to blame for everything, you know, have their taxes withhold whether they owe it or not. By the end of the year, we determine if there's a refund. Everybody who's a wage earner has withholding. This simply says independent contractors have the same obligation as wage earners, and they can be withheld. They can get their refunds if that's how the taxes turn out, but in the meantime, we have some money to make sure that all of the obligations are met. Beyond that, everything else in this bill are enforcement and administration measures, the financial records match, extending the sales tax nexus, eliminating abusive tax shelters, and other things that are tax expenditures. Members, it is a way of reducing expenditures and collecting that which is owed to us without increasing taxes. As for your aye vote.
Members, any debate or discussion? Seeing, hearing none, would the Secretary please call the roll?
Onnested? No. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Benoit? No. Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? No. Cox? No. Denham? No. DeSaulnier? Duchesne? Aye. Dutton? Flores?
Aye.
Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? No. Hollingsworth? Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Semidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye. Hollingsworth? No. DeSaulnier? Aye. Padilla? Aye.
Ayes 23.
Dutton, no.
Ayes 24. Noes 15. Noes 16. The measure passes. Senator Cheney, next item.
Assembly Bill 2.
File item 18. Would the Secretary please read?
Okay. Assembly Bill 2 by the Assembly Committee on Budget, an act relating to taxation to take effect immediately. Tax levy.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members, this is the revenue-neutral tax bill that repeals the 18-cent gasoline and diesel excise tax that we currently pay for fuel, a revenue decrease of $2.4 billion in 09-10, and replaces that with monies that can be used in the general fund. The oil severance tax, the tobacco tax Senator Padilla talked about earlier, the governor's proposal for an emergency service tax on insurance policies, and the $15 vehicle surcharge for Park Pass that was presented last week. All four of those then replace the money from the 18-cent excise tax on gasoline that would be removed. Ask for your aye vote.
Members, debate or discussion? Seeing, hearing none. Senator Cedillo recognizes his desk.
Members, if I may, I don't want to say much during this process, but I do want to give a defense for our proposal and a suggestion that we take it seriously. You know, members, we are, I would suggest, in a crisis of leadership. And I think it's important for us to figure out how we got here. Now, let's think about California. California, even on today, on its worst day of the economy, California nevertheless remains the 8th largest economy of the world. It is the 8th largest economy of the world. What does that mean? That means we have $1.4 trillion of economic activity. That means we have a very diverse economy. That means we have a strategic location. That means we have ports and airports to move business. That means we have a fine public education system, a very prestigious University of California, a very thoughtful state university system, and community colleges to help our economy during times of transition. It's an extraordinary state that we live in. And the question is, for those concerned about the economy, is how we got here. How did California become the great state that it is? Well, it's what you guys call taxes, and it's what I call investment. California became the great state that it is because people, leaders with a vision, decided to invest in California. Our great governors had a vision of how we could grow this state. And how did we do that? Well, we invested, you would call it taxes, we invested in education. and we were the #1 spending state on education. We invested in infrastructure, and we created this incredible state and this incredible culture of the automobile. We invested in parks, and we built the largest social welfare state in the nation. We did that under the leadership of Governor Ronald Reagan. And so we created the 8th largest economy of the world. And it hummed along with the great investments, the great research and development, the great infrastructure, the great waterways. We moved ourselves to be positioned in the whole world, a place where more than 220 nations would look with envy upon us. Look with envy upon us. Now we're challenged to see today of whether or not we want to maintain this commitment to greatness, to maintain this commitment to being and continuing the great state that we are. And that challenge comes, I say to you, because for too long, for the last 30 years, we have nitpicked and tweaked at and assaulted the very great state that we are. And so for 30 years, what we've seen is people say that we could have, Lou Correa.
Members.
We have said that you could have more for less. We have said and heard people say that government is the problem. We have heard people say that the 9 scariest words are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. We have even heard people refer to this great state and this great nation as a monster, and that we have to starve the beast. And that's how we got here, because it's this effort of trying to say that we could have more for less. And so today, Ron Calderon, today, we're in this very Orwellian discussion. Today, we're talking about creating jobs by cutting jobs. I mean, that just seems Orwellian to me. We're going to create jobs by cutting jobs. We're here for the economy, but the very acts that are being proposed undermine the economy. These cuts to education, this dumbing down of California will be the doom for this state, and if we're followed, it'll be the doom for this nation. We say we're for the middle class, but we undermine the very aspects and elements of what it is to live in a middle class community, to live safe and secure. We cut public safety, we cut quality schools, we cut cops and firefighters, we close libraries and parks. We say we're for the middle class, but our proposals go right against the very core of what it is to be middle class. We cut health care, we cut welfare. We are attacking what we have been so proud of in the past. Now let's talk about the electorate and what they said. First of all, there's 38 million people that live in California, 17 million are registered, 4 million took the time to vote, and 2.7 million voted on that day. 2.7 million. Some were told, as Abel Maldonado said, some were told, don't vote for this, because we want to save for a rainy day. I have to tell you, it's raining cats and dogs outside. It might be 110 degrees, but it's raining cats and dogs outside. We were also told to do your job and don't tax me. Now, I, like Alex Padilla, and all of us have gone and talked to our electorate. I had a particular time that I focused talking to the electorate in a community that was a lot more conservative than downtown Los Angeles or Santa Cruz or Santa Monica or San Francisco. And you know what? It's amazing that if you take the time to talk to voters and you explain to them and engage them in conversations about their families, their hopes, their aspirations, about what their vision is for their families and their communities in this state, I found almost without exception none of them would be for the VLF cuts. None of them thought that when they were going to cut the car tax, quote, close quote, that somehow the money they saved was going to be sufficient for them to pay for more cops in their community, more teachers in their schools, and better infrastructure to get to their jobs. No one thought that. And I found that today, given that opportunity, most would be willing to reinvest. We saw in the polls that followed shortly the elections that people are willing to join the 47 other states that take advantage of the resources that come from having oil in your state. And we found that even smokers are willing to pay more taxes, because at the end of the day they know that at some point they'll stop and we'll be healthier and we'll have the resources and the investments to make California great. And so I come to you with my favorite saying. Martin Luther King said the measure of a man is not where he stands at times of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of crisis and controversy. The real man will jeopardize his standing in his community and his prestige and even his life to help his fellow man. We are clear as Democrats that we are not going to cut the poor, the working class, and the middle class. We are uncompromising on that position. We are willing to take positions that are unpopular.
Okay.
We're willing to take positions that will not help our careers. But we do so because we want to stand as men and women at this time of conflict and controversy. We want to reach out and help our fellow man. We want to be that legislature that stood for California, its past, its present, and its future. I ask for an aye on the proposition.
Senator Ashburn is recognized at his desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I particularly enjoyed the remarks of our distinguished colleague, Senator Cedillo, and especially his characterizations about the greatness of California. He, of course, recounted earlier days when California actually built highways and water systems and provided the utility infrastructure for a high standard of living and a good quality of life for our people. Now, we all know that we don't do those things anymore. We don't improve our water system. We barely do anything to our highways as far as adding capacity for more vehicles, nor do we allow the construction of power plants or the transmission lines to carry the electrons so that California residents and businesses will have low-cost energy. The commerce, the manufacturing, the business, the transportation of California all rolls on oil. The greatness of this state rolls on oil produced in our state. And you come before us today with a proposal to tax the oil. Let's make sure we have less of this oil to provide for the commerce, the manufacturing, the business and the transportation, and the high quality of life for California residents. Now, so much debate over what the voters meant on May 19. I won't even attempt to explain it to you except to say that Californians believe they are paying enough, and you are going to sock them between the eyes with a huge new tax on oil that they will pay when they put the pump into their car to fuel that car to provide their transportation to their job, to their kids' schools, and to carry out their daily life as California citizens. You are hitting the taxpayers right between the eyes at a time that California families are struggling to make ends meet. This oil severance tax hurts California's economy. It hurts the jobs. It hurts real Californians by adding to the cost of living. In case you didn't know it, Californians are sensitive about how much gasoline costs. When it went up to $4 a gallon a year ago, it hurt California families. Now, I know this comes as a shock to the Democrat members. This really hurt California families. Now we're grateful that prices are at $3, and you don't think that's enough? So let's sock them with an oil severance tax. And do you think for 1 minute that an oil company is going to absorb that tax and not pass it along to the consumers? Of course the consumer pays every tax, and every Californian knows it. So you can play this game, Mr. President, day 4 of games in the Senate. You can try to do this on a majority vote and play another game, but Californians understand this. You don't respect them. If you respected Californians, you would not be adding to the financial burden of Californians trying to pay their mortgage, pay the rent, buy the groceries, and raise the kids.
Senator Hancock is recognized for his desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few words about the oil severance tax. We do have choices in this budget, and the proposed oil severance tax is one of them. And it makes sense, members, because California is the only one of the 22 oil-producing states in this nation that does not have an oil severance tax. In Alaska, Governor Sarah Palin in 2007 raised the oil severance tax to 25%. Now, it was pointed out on the Assembly floor last night that Alaska doesn't have an income tax. But Louisiana has an income tax, and it has an oil severance tax and royalties on oil that add up to 22%. Even the federal government gets 12% on the oil that it extracts off the California coast outside the 3-mile limit, while California gets nothing from the oil extracted inside the 3-mile limit. In addition to being a tax that every other state in the United States that produces oil has, an oil severance tax will not drive up prices at the pump. It's a scare tactic, and scare tactics at this point in our budget negotiations and our conversation with the people of California are not respectful. The oil market is global. The oil market is competitive. The Rand Corporation study of an oil severance tax found that it will not and cannot be passed on to consumers and will not affect oil production. One of the leading oil economists in the country, Severin Bornstein of UC Berkeley, says that oil refineries in California buy their oil from all over the world. They buy at the lowest price, and California oil producers would be unlikely to raise their prices because the refineries can and will shop elsewhere. Virtually all economists agree. The California proposed tax, which I'll remind you was proposed by the governor in the beginning of these budget negotiations, makes sense. It is the norm in oil-producing states, and at a time when we are asking women and children and the poor and the old and our teachers and our firefighters and our schools and our universities to do with less and do without, it makes sense for a fair and reasonable tax that is paid by oil producers across the United States to be instituted in California, and I would ask for your aye vote.
Senator DeCheney, you may close.
Who's Senator Dutton?
Oh, Senator Dutton, I'm sorry, recognize his desk.
Yeah, just a minor clarification here. Actually, been really looking into the oil severance, but this particular bill isn't just about oil. It's about a lot of other things. There's a lot of different taxes in here. But specifically regarding the oil, actually there's a report that was produced. Some of you might remember a Dr. William Ham. He was the LEO here in California some time ago. And there was a study actually done back in December, and a 9.9% severance tax on oil would actually result in the loss of 9,850 jobs here in California. So, I don't know, we can kind of argue back and forth about what economists are saying what. I happen to put a lot of credibility into this one. But one of the other things, too, to keep in mind, it isn't just the severance tax. A lot of these states that people refer to as being ones that charge a severance tax that California is not charging, they also don't charge property tax based on the amount of oil in reserve underground. See, California happens to be one of those states that charges based on what the value of the underground oil is. Has nothing to do about what's on the ground level. So that's a unique thing to us. Also, Texas, for an example, they only charge a 1% franchise fees as opposed to the corporate tax rate that we charge here in California. You also have sales tax, which is a big difference. A lot of those states that charge severance taxes do not charge sales tax. So what we might want to do, in the spirit of comparison, if we want to continue to be somewhat competitive, we at least might want to make the full adjustment. So let's take away those things that we charge that is unique with regards to oil production, and let's actually go ahead and reduce those so that you can do your severance tax. But, you know, frankly, if we don't get serious about allowing the exploration of oil in a safe way off our coast, an opportunity that we had that we don't seem to want to actually proceed with, it doesn't really make a heck of a lot of difference, because the way we're going about it, the oil reserves that are here in California that can be safely taken out will once again keep slipping into the Federal Reserve areas, and so the federal government will continue to take the benefit of those dollars instead of us being able to use them for the benefit of California, so we don't have to make a lot of these cuts that we're talking about. I oppose this bill for a lot of different reasons, but I did want to clarify with regards to the severance tax. It isn't just a clear black and white issue. There are differences with these other states. We ought to keep that in consideration. But I'm really concerned about the anticipation or the potential loss of 10,000 jobs if we do this. Vote no.
Senator DeCheney, you may close.
Thank you very much, members. We can debate a variety of ways to change our tax structure. We are all hopeful, I think, that the commission that is supposed to come out with its report at the end of this month will come up with some interesting, and what we've heard from them already, ways to completely restructure our sales and corporate and possibly even our personal income tax system. And I wish they had come out with their report a month ago and we could do some of those things. But for today, what we have before us in an effort to close the $24 billion gap is a proposal to swap out for a variety of things, including, again, two things the governor has had, three actually of the four, are governor's proposals. Last fall he proposed the oil severance tax. The year before for health care he proposed the cigarette tax. And this year he proposed the emergency services tax. We have added those three in an effort to be compromising, in an effort to meet the governor more than halfway, and only added the $15 to cover the parks as an additional tax swapped out. Ask for your aye vote.
Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Onnested? No. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Benoit? No. Calderon? Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? No. Cox? No. Denham? DeSaulnier? Aye. Duchesne? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores?
Aye.
Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? No. Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? No. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Runner? Or, excuse me, Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Smidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye. Denham? No.
Ayes 22, no 17. The measure passes. Senator Ducheney. Next item.
AB 4.
AB 4, would the Secretary please read?
Assembly Bill 4 by Assemblymember Evans, an act relating to transportation.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Members, this is a transportation trailer bill. Provides $1.9 billion in general fund relief from transportation funds, shifting some local gas tax funds to pay the state bond debt. I would remind us that, in fact, the state bond debt also pays for local streets and roads. So we're paying a portion of that bond debt with these funds, but only for 2 years. I would point that out. The governor's original proposal was to take that money permanently from local government. The suggestion of the conference committee was to do it for only 2 years and allow but to pay that debt, and simultaneously in other parts of this package, members, we allocate $700 million in local streets and roads money from the 1B bond in order to allow some of those projects to go forward even as this money is shifted to pay the debt. It also shifts transit revenue in accordance with the governor's May revised proposal. It shifts some money from the aeronautics account to the general fund and requires local reimbursement to Caltrans when the department does work and reviews projects on behalf of local governments. Ask for your aye vote.
Members, debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, would the Secretary please call the roll?
Onnested? No. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Benoit? Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Cox? No. Denham? No. DeSaulnier? Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores?
Aye.
Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? No. Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Smidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye. Wiggins, aye. Benoit, no.
Ayes 23, noes 15. The measure is passed. Senator Ducheney, next item.
SB 29.
Senate Bill 29. Will the Secretary please read?
Senate Bill 29 by Senator Ducheney, an act relating to redevelopment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President and members. This bill would continue the shift of $350 million from RDAs to the schools that was made in the 08-09 budget year, if in fact we subsequently pass the bill that fixes the language in accordance with the court direction. This would do the same for 9-10 and 10-11, and additionally fixes the statutory language so that the money from that shift goes only to the school districts within the redevelopment area. Ask for your aye vote.
Any debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, would the Secretary please call the roll?
Onnested? No. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Benoit? No. Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Cox? No. Denham? No. DeSaulnier? Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores?
Aye.
Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? No. Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Semidian? Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye. Wiggins, aye. Semidian, aye. Padilla, aye. Ashburn, no.
Ayes 23, noes 15. The measure passes. Senator Cheney. Next item.
SB 30.
Will the Secretary please read SB 30? Bio item 9.
Senate Bill 30 by Senator DeCheney, an act relating to public social services and making an appropriation therefore.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, members, this bill makes an adjustment to allow the counties to take greater responsibility for CalWORKS grants and to provide them the funding to do that from vehicle license fees that have been dedicated to the Department of Motor Vehicles in the past, and by giving them additional sales tax revenue to up the county share of cost on the CalWORKS grants. As for your aye vote.
Any debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, would the Secretary please call the roll?
Onnested? No. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Benoit? No. Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Cox? No. Denham? No. DeSaulnier? DeCheney? Aye. Dutton? Flores?
Aye.
Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? No. Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? Aye. Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Semidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye.
Ayes 23, noes 14. The measure passes. Senator DeCheney. Next item.
31.
Clerk, please read SB 31.
Senate Bill 31 by Senator DeCheney, an act relating to transportation.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, members, this bill institutes the 18 cents per gallon fee on gasoline necessary as the corollary to the earlier legislation. 18 cents is the current amount of that excise tax, so at the pump, the price of gas would not increase. And there would be no change to what consumers pay at the pump based on this bill. It also increases the base driver's license amount in order to keep the motor vehicle account whole. Ask for your aye vote.
Any debate or discussion? Seeing hearing none, would the Secretary please call the roll?
Onnested? No. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? No. Benoit? No. Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? No. Corbett? Aye. Correa? No. Cox? No. Denham? No. DeSaulnier? Aye. DeCheney? Aye. Dutton? No. Flores?
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? No. Hollingsworth? No. Huff? No. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? No. Negrete McLeod? Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? No. Smidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? No. Walters? No. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? No. Yee? Yee, aye. Mr. President, ayes 23, no 16.
Ayes 23, no 16. The measure passes. Senator Steinberg, the budget bills have been completed.
We done? Okay.
Members, let's take the consent calendar up if we could. Okay. Members, the third extraordinary session is recessed. We will now convene in regular session. We'll be taking up the consent calendar. Senator Hancock, you're recognized.
Thank you very much. I'd like to remove AB 753 from the special consent calendar at the request of the author.
Okay, without objection. Okay. Members, we're taking up the consent calendar. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Onnested? Aye. Alquist? Aye. Ashburn? Aye. Benoit? Aye. Calderon? Aye. Cedillo? Aye. Cogdill? Aye. Corbett? Aye. Correa? Aye. Cox? Aye. Denham? Aye. Dusanier? Aye. Ducheney? Aye. Dutton? Aye. Flores?
Aye.
Aye. Hancock? Aye. Harmon? Aye. Hollingsworth? Aye. Huff? Aye. Kehoe? Aye. Leno? Aye. Liu? Aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Maldonado? Aye. Negrete McLeod? Oropesa? Aye. Padilla? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Price? Aye. Romero? Aye. Runner? Aye. Smidian? Aye. Steinberg? Aye. Strickland? Aye. Walters? Aye. Wiggins? Aye. Wolk? Aye. Wright? Aye. Wyland? Aye. Yee? Yee, aye. Negrete McLeod? Aye.
Ayes 40, no 0. The consent calendar is approved. Any objection for utilizing the unanimous roll call as a substitute? Seeing and hearing none. The special consent calendar is approved. Ayes 40, no 0. Senator Steinberg is recognized at his desk. Senator Kehoe.
Thank you, Mr. President. To the appropriations members, we will convene at 2:30 in room 4203.
Senator Romero is recognized.
Mr. President and members, we will have a meeting of the Education Committee immediately upon adjournment or recess to hear one bill in room 3191.
Senator Negrete McLeod.
The BMP committee will meet at 1:30.
Senator Steinberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. A couple of announcements. Number one, in coordination with the Assembly, we still have to work out some details. I'm going to, in all probability, just so you have forewarning, going to cancel all committee hearings tomorrow and postpone those hearings until Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, given the impending deadline. Secondly, members, in making the next announcement, allow me just a few seconds to sort of describe where I believe we are. I've not given up. My colleagues have not given up. I'm sure you have not given up on getting to a $20+ billion, call it a $24 billion solution to the budget revision by midnight tomorrow night. But let us stipulate as we stand here at nearly 1 o'clock on the day before that we don't yet have an agreement on the whole $24 billion solution. We have presented over the last 4 days, as you know, and as there's been much debate, a series of options that would get us there. I look forward to spending the remainder of the afternoon either with the legislative leadership or the governor to continue to see how we might resolve our differences. But in the meantime, members, if we can't agree on the $24 billion solution, we can certainly agree on our obligation to do the minimum necessary to avoid IOUs for the people of California.
Yeah.
Now, you either take our history together, our willingness to talk reform in any and all ways in good faith, or you take the position that you, and this is to the governor as well, that you do it our way over the next 37 hours, or the state will in fact be faced with IOUs. Let's be reasonable here. If we can't agree on $24 billion, let us agree on, one, achieving current year education cuts. That's $3 billion of cuts that we will lose, and the deferrals necessary to avoid the pain for the people that we all represent. So I want to recess this session until 4 o'clock this afternoon, and we will come back on this floor and we will take up the limited items around current year education cuts and the deferral bills. So we'll see everybody back here at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you.
Members, the Senate, Senator Yee is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. At the request of the author, AB 1455, file item number 69, placed on the inactive.
Without objection. Members, the Senate will stand in recess till 4 p.m. The Senate will stand in recess till 4 p.m.